Iran will begin on Monday. Meanwhile, Iran's military has denied Trump's claim that Tehran asked Washington to call off strikes, adding that Iran's armed forces remain at the highest level of readiness. Sape Saremi reports from Tehran.
Iran has rejected President Donald Trump's account of the latest developments, while stressing that the country remains prepared for any possible military confrontation. Iranian military sources have denied Trump's claim that Tehran asked Washington to call off the strikes, describing his remarks as a new lie and an attempt to pressure the countries in the region. They say Iran's armed forces remain at the highest level of readiness. Iran's acting defense minister Majid ibn al-Reza has also said Tehran considers every threat from its adversaries to be real and credible, even when it may be part of psychological warfare. He said Iran would not be caught off guard or remain passive and would respond by strengthening its military readiness, deterrence, and defense capabilities. Here on the ground, however, many Iranians appear increasingly tired of the repeated cycle of escalation followed by diplomacy. After years of military threats, sanctions, and uncertainty, public fatigue seems to be growing, particularly as economic pressure continues to intensify. For many people, their immediate concerns remain inflation, livelihoods, and the rising cost of living. Sape Saremi, CGTN, Tehran.
Renewed U.S. threats to attack Iran have raised concerns among countries in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Qatar, the UAE, Turkey and other countries have urged the two sides to de-escalate tensions. Jagruti Dave reports from Washington.
If we look at what the president is saying on Truth Social, he said that the U.S. is locked and loaded and ready to go. But despite this, he claims that the U.S. has been asked by Iran and other Middle Eastern countries to hold off on any attack, in that the perimeters of a deal have been agreed to, he said.
I was asked to by Saudi Arabia, by UAE, by Qatar, and by Iran. We were all set to go just about at this time right now, and it would have been a massive attack. We're all set to go, but when the allies ask to call it off, you got to sort of say, well, let's see.
And he says this deal would include the immediate, complete and total reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and an end to Iran's nuclear threat. So based on this, he says he has agreed to cancel the attack, subject to being able to rapidly make a deal. And he says Israel is joining him on this. So we first heard reports about Saudi Arabia asking Donald Trump to hold off on new attacks from Axios. And that appears to be confirmed by a statement on Saudi Arabia's state news agency, which said that the Crown Prince MBS had spoken to Donald Trump, and he talked about the importance of de-escalation to preserve regional stability, according to this statement, to prevent Gulf countries from being drawn into a wider conflict, the statement says, whose repercussions would affect regional and international security and stability. These are, of course, concerns about the energy infrastructure in the Gulf. The media reports that said that the US was planning a strike with Israel on Iran's infrastructure. Well, the response to that potentially could have been for Iran to hit energy infrastructure across the Gulf. And that is very much worrying Saudi Arabia and other Gulf allies. And so that is why they appear to have pushed President Trump to hold off on these strikes for now. We know that both sides, both Iran and the US, deeply distrust each other. The ball is back in the court of the mediators. Oman and Iran are currently going through the agreement on the Strait of Hormuz to see if they can come to an agreement that is palatable to Iran as well as the United States. The question is, can mediators overcome this deep distrust on both sides to prevent a more dangerous escalation in the future?
Global oil prices have tumbled after President Donald Trump's latest announcement. Brent crude futures dropped more than 6% to over $82 per barrel. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz has caused sharp fluctuations in oil prices since fighting began in February. Meanwhile, 7 OPEC plus countries have agreed to raise their oil production cap by 188,000 barrels per day in September to support the oil market. Now, 2 days of Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 18 Palestinians in Gaza, the biggest daily death toll in weeks. It comes just days after U.S. President Donald Trump announced Hamas had agreed to disarm under the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire, although Hamas says this is contingent on Israel's withdrawal. Israeli warplanes on Sunday bombed Gaza City in the north, the central city of Deir al-Balah, and the southern area of Khan Yunis. Israeli Energy Minister Eli Cohen says Tel Aviv has not agreed to halt attacks on Gaza. He added Israel might take full control of Gaza if Hamas does not disarm first. Trump's Board of Peace has published a 15-point roadmap setting out the final steps to realize last year's ceasefire agreement. Now, since the October 7th attacks in 2023, Israel has sharply tightened restrictions on Palestinian workers entering from the occupied West Bank, suspending many work permits. Some permits have since been reinstated, but many Palestinians remain unable to legally access jobs in Israel, leaving families under severe economic pressure. Francesca Maria Lorenzini reports from Ramallah.
This wall separates Israel from the occupied West Bank. Every morning, Palestinian workers wait at checkpoints like this to reach jobs in Israel. We are heading to the Kalandia checkpoint. Almost every day, Hamdi makes this journey from Bethlehem to his construction job in Jerusalem.
Before October 7th, we used to pass through the 300 checkpoint. After October 7th, I think they removed all permits for all workers in Palestine, and there were no workers left, no permits with workers at all.
The 300 checkpoint is one of the main crossings between Bethlehem and Jerusalem. Before October 7th, thousands of Palestinian workers passed through here on their way to jobs in Israel. Hamdi lost his permit along with thousands of other workers. He only managed to get a new one a few months ago, but says he now pays thousands of shekels each month, far more than the few hundreds he used to pay. For many Palestinians, legal work is now out of reach. Unable to obtain permits, many Palestinians have turned to risky crossings without authorization, using breaches in the separation barrier or remote areas.
Over the past 2 years, many have been killed, many have been injured, and prisons are full of workers, all because there are no resources.
Those caught risk arrest and imprisonment. Others are shot while trying to cross. But many say they have little choice if they want to provide for their families.
People say, well, I have 50% of being shot at, but if I stay at home, there's 80% that my children will starve. So I prefer to go and risk myself and go and work.
The restrictions also affected Israel's labor market. Construction, one of the sectors most dependent on Palestinian workers, faced major shortages as many employers struggled to replace them. Crossing the Green Line without a permit has long been a gamble. Security crackdowns following October 2023 temporarily sealed off many of the routes. But deepening economic hardship in the West Bank is changing that calculation. For many, the struggle to get a living now outweighs the risk of being caught. Francesca Maria Lorenzini, CGTN, Ramallah, West Bank.
Many areas in Japan and the Republic of Korea have reported record high temperatures. In Japan's quake-hit Kumamoto prefecture, an elderly woman died from suspected sunstroke. She was taking shelter in a car following the earthquake. Almost 100 people, most of them elderly, have been sent to hospitals for heat-related cases. In the Republic of Korea, about 15 places across the country reported temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius. More than 1,700 heat stroke cases were reported, with 13 dead from mid-May to the end of July. Agriculture and livestock have also been affected. A persistent heat wave is reshaping the rhythm of urban life across Morocco. In Rabat and other areas in other cities, residents are increasingly shifting dining, shopping and leisure activities into the cooler evening hours. The change is keeping restaurants, markets and public spaces busy late into the night, while creating new opportunities and longer working hours for local businesses. CGTN's Aden Chauchi reports.
Under the intense daytime heat, many streets remain unusually quiet, but once temperatures begin to fall, the capital comes back to life as residents see cooler air outdoors.
The atmosphere is much better at night. The streets become lively and crowded as people go out after the temperature drops. During the day, the hot weather keeps most people indoors.
For families, evenings have become the best time to eat out, meet friends and enjoy public spaces away from the afternoon heat.
The summer atmosphere is lively and the streets are crowded at night. The evenings are pleasant, encouraging families to go out for dinner, enjoy street food, and make the most of the cooler weather.
The shift is also affecting local businesses. Restaurants see fewer customers during the day, before demand for drinks and night meals rises after sunset.
Because of the heat, customers mainly look for cold drinks and water to cool down. Business is limited during the hottest hours, but it improves slightly in the evening. The most popular foods are tacos, pizza and sandwiches, while lighter meals are also in demand.
Shopping districts are staying active for longer as residents and tourists use the cooler nighttime hours to explore markets and local businesses.
When temperatures fall, people come out to walk around and enjoy the atmosphere. Tourism is also thriving, with visitors exploring local clothing shops, perfume stores and traditional products.
Festivals, theatre performances and other summer events are adding to the nighttime crowds, while a sense of security encourages people to remain outdoors until late.
Cities organize a wide range of festivals, evening events and theatre performances for residents and visitors. Moroccan cities are also safe, allowing people to walk around freely and enjoy the streets late at night.
In Rabat and across Morocco, the heatwave is reshaping the pace of urban life, extending commercial and social activity deep into the night and turning the cooler hours into the main window for movement, leisure and business. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN.
And that is it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent in Africa Live. Thanks for watching. A drone strike in Sudan's North Darfur state kills at least 37 people. We examine the long-term U.S. visa policy targeting at least 30 African countries. And the death toll from a migrant surge into Spanish territory in North Africa rises to at least 72. I'm Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. Welcome to Africa Live. Also ahead on the program, household power prices in Egypt rise by 12%. And in sports, Cameroon punched their ticket to the Women's Africa Cup of Nations quarterfinals. We begin in Sudan, where at least 37 people were killed and dozens more got injured after a drone strike hit a local customary court in North Darfur State on Sunday. The attack targeted the court building in the Gura Zawiya area of Kakbabia while local leaders were in a meeting. The dead reportedly included Rapid Support Forces field commanders, tribal elders and traditional leaders. The court, a key civilian institution used to resolve community disputes, was heavily damaged. The spokesperson for the Tassis Alliance has called for an independent investigation, urging the international community to help protect civilians as the ongoing conflict drags into its fourth year amid a worsening humanitarian crisis. Staying in Sudan, the U.S. brokered peace efforts have hit a major setback after the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces rejected demands to withdraw from cities under its control. The Sudanese army insists that any agreement must begin with the RSF's withdrawal. Naba Mohideen reports from Khartoum.
Mediators are now trying to salvage talks for a 90 days humanitarian truce led by U.S. Senior Advisor Masoud Wallace, but while the army demands a full withdrawal, the RSF says these conditions amount to surrender.
The military's recent gains in Kordofan have strengthened its position in the negotiations. They could also help civilians return to their homes and improve humanitarian access.
Mediators hope a truce will create space for aid deliveries and confidence-building measures, but fighting continues across several fronts, making any breakthrough increasingly difficult.
Recent fighting in Kordofan has reshaped the battlefield and prompted both sides to reinforce their positions. That shows neither is ready to make concessions, making a humanitarian truce unlikely to improve conditions on the ground.
For now, mediators face the challenge of keeping the talks alive. Despite the continued mediation efforts, the distance between the two sides remains far apart, leaving hope for a humanitarian truce uncertain. Naba Mohideen, CGTN, Khartoum, Sudan.
To Nigeria now, where gunmen have killed a dozen people and abducted several others during a night attack in the northwestern Sokoto state. That's according to witnesses who spoke to Reuters news agency. The gunmen are said to have entered the village of Lajinge around 11 p.m. on Saturday and terrorized residents until 3 a.m. on Sunday. One resident claims the attackers set fire to a home, killing 6 members of one family. Police say they are investigating the reports. And it comes as the country continues battling attacks by gunmen who regularly raid villages, kidnap residents for ransom and steal livestock. A controversial policy that requires visitors to the U.S. to post cash bonds of up to $20,000 has been made permanent. The rule targets business and tourist visa applicants, with at least 30 of the 50 affected countries being in Africa. And as CGTN's Daniel Arap Moy tells us, U.S. officials say a year-long test run proved the bonds were effective in stopping visitors from overstaying.
Under the finalized rule, non-immigrant visitors applying for business or tourist visas from designated countries must post a financial bond before their visa is issued. The State Department has drastically increased the minimum rates from last year's trial program. Now, consular officers can require deposits of $10,000, $15,000 or $20,000 per person. The money will be fully refunded if the applicant is denied a visa or if they visit the U.S. and leave on time. Out of the 50 nations currently on the target list, at least 30 are African countries. Initial pilot participants like Malawi and Zambia have been joined by broader regional U.S. partners, including Nigeria. According to the U.S. State Department, the list will be updated regularly, meaning more countries could be added with 15 days' notice. The State Department says the main goal is preventing visitors from overstaying their allowed time. Official data shows that in 2024, nearly 46,000 citizens from these 50 countries overstayed their visas. During the pilot phase, that number plunged to fewer than 50. Washington also cites security concerns such as poor information sharing or weak passport checks and argues that deporting those who overstay cost taxpayers approximately $18,000 per person. While U.S. officials hail the policy as a security success, critics argue it creates an unbearable financial burden. Civil rights and business groups warn that making these bonds permanent will lock out genuine travelers, students, and entrepreneurs from across Africa and beyond. With the final rule taking effect, travelers from affected nations will now need thousands of dollars in reserve before booking a trip to the U.S. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN.
Well, for more on this, let's bring in Professor David Monda, a political science expert at the City University of New York. Professor Monda, thank you for joining us on the program. The U.S. says the visa bond program is intended to reduce visa overstays. Will it be sustainable, considering the hefty deposits, which is quite steep for many people in Africa?
I think it depends on what you mean by sustainability. In terms of limiting the number of students and business people from sub-Saharan Africa, I think it's definitely going to do that. The pilot program, which was enforced, actually allowed for a drop in over half of the people that were going to accept these bonds. And it really reduced the number of people that were issued with visas. So in the long term, I think it may reduce, it will definitely reduce the number of applicants, visa applicants in particular from sub-Saharan Africa. But I think in the long term, it's going to seriously affect U.S. Soft power diplomacy. This is the benefits that the U.S. gets from business interactions from Africa, from students coming to the country. And also, let's not forget, one of the largest recipient of students to the U.S. is Nigeria. So this is going to be a huge hit, particularly for those universities that rely on African students, because that's revenue, and that's also political goodwill in terms of soft power. So I think in the long term, they're going to have to revisit this policy because it's a net negative for the U.S.
So let's look at that soft power diplomacy and narrow it in a little bit, because at least 30 of the affected countries are from Africa. What specific message is this sending to the continent, and what is the likely impact on U.S.-Africa relations diplomatically, politically especially, and on the economic front?
I think, frankly, it's a very xenophobic message, because what you're really saying in the broad spectrum of the world is you want immigrants from Europe who can come here on the visa waiver status, essentially advanced countries, developed countries, but countries of the global south, which are essentially countries of people of color, brown and black migrants or visitors. This is the message that it's sending, that they're not wanted. And let's not forget that this goes back to a very dark era in U.S. history, particularly in the 1920s, when we had serious restrictions against foreign immigrants, the anti-miscegenation laws against Chinese immigrants, and later barring of immigration from many countries, many developing countries, particularly in Africa and South Asia. So I think in terms of soft power diplomacy, it's going to be a big hit. And let's also not forget that a lot of these African countries, developing countries, they're not benign actors. So by that I mean a lot of these countries could decide to enforce reciprocal bans on or restrictions on U.S. visitors, as we've seen in some of the countries in the Sahel. So if the U.S. has these bans or these visa restrictions, other countries could reciprocate. And then I think lastly, in terms of diplomacy, African countries could use their leverage in the United Nations, in multilateral organizations to balance against the U.S., to frustrate some of the U.S.'s efforts around the world, maybe around the war in the Middle East and around other multilateral issues. So African countries are not benign actors, and this will really cause a lot of tension, I think, between the AU and Washington.
So, Professor Monda, are there international legal or diplomatic norms that govern visa policies, or is it entirely within a country's sovereign right to impose whatever it feels like?
The internal sovereignty of a country are really determined by the country itself. So the U.S. or any other country for that matter, China, Kenya, Nigeria, how they enforce domestic law is really up to the country, up to its sovereignty. But let's not forget that these countries, and the U.S. in this context, are signatories to international diplomatic codes. These really affect diplomatic norms. So to answer your question, yes, it definitely goes against diplomatic norms, particularly this idea of allowing migration, allowing free migration of human capital and of goods and services across and between borders, around the International World Trade Organization treaties around free movement of people, and also around this broader area question of reciprocity. So that if African countries have open visa policies to the U.S., the diplomatic norm would be that the U.S. should also have open or flexible visa policies towards Africa, particularly given that the U.S. is trying to expand its interaction with the continent. So a lot of these questions are written in the UN Charter in terms of diplomatic norms, but a lot of them are also tied in with diplomatic culture and norms around reciprocity and collegiality around questions of diplomacy. And this is definitely goes against that spirit.
All right, Professor David Monda joining us there from the City University of New York. Thank you. Now, in Egypt, authorities have recorded no casualties from an early morning earthquake that struck 38 kilometers north of the city of Suez. The 5.6 magnitude quake occurred at 3 a.m. local time, according to the country's Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics. The Egyptian Red Crescent says it activated its emergency response plan in the governorates where the quake was felt. Residents have been urged to avoid buildings showing signs of structural damage and to follow official updates. Well, the death toll in last week's migrant influx from Morocco into Spain's North African territory of Ceuta has climbed to at least 72. More than 50,000 people crossed into Ceuta by land and sea on Thursday, prompting alarm across the European Union. Spanish authorities say most of the 50,000 have returned to Morocco. Meanwhile, a confrontation between right-wing activists and locals in Ceuta has revealed deep divisions over the migrants' crisis. Ken Brown reports.
A standoff in Ceuta.
Well, moments of real tension here on the streets of Ceuta.
The presence of Núcleo Nacional, a neo-Nazi group, and other extreme right leaders caused a mobilization through social media of many Ceutans and Moroccans opposing their political standpoint. Avize Perez is a far-right politician, a member of the European Parliament, and he's trapped in this cafe in central Ceuta. He's been accused of spreading racist, xenophobic and anti-Islamic views.
They have come to propagate their hate speech in our city. They are against the Muslim citizens of Ceuta.
With emotions high, the police escort from the cafe turned into a chaotic scene. Perez chased through the streets as the police struggled to maintain order.
The streets of conflict here in Ceuta, you can see behind me. That is Avize Perez. He is the creator of the Se Acabó la Fiesta party. It means the party's over. He managed to win the votes to get in to the European Parliament. Avize Perez is here in Ceuta. People are screaming around me. They are saying that he is only here to create trouble, to use the crisis, the migratory crisis, for his own political gain. They're telling him to get out of here. He needs a police escort to get out of here.
Eventually, he had to be escorted from the city in an armoured police vehicle as protesters cheered. We heard differing opinions on the street.
He came here for nothing, for a photo op for his political campaign, and he is off again.
He came with a certain political ideology to support people with everything that's happening in the city, and he's been impeded from doing that. There was a boycott shared on social media, particularly among Muslim groups, and from what I read, they even aimed to injure him.
On Sunday, the leader of Spain's far-right Vox party also showed up in Ceuta.
The person responsible for this is Pedro Sanchez, but he shares that responsibility with Morocco. This is an invasion.
A migration and humanitarian crisis that's become a political crisis, revealing a deepening political divide.
And now to the latest on the Ebola outbreak in the eastern DRC. The World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus and the Africa CDC Director General Jean Kasaye are set to visit Bunia, the epicenter in the DRC. The two will hold meetings with the country's leaders, frontline health workers and affected communities. The visit comes as transmission continues to outpace efforts to contain the epidemic. In what is now the world's second largest outbreak ever, officials say more than 3,600 people have been infected and over 1,500 have died. It has been spreading fast since mid-May for a number of reasons, one of which is the lack of a vaccine against the rare Bundibugyo strain. However, WHO says there are some promising signs on this front, including a vaccine being developed by Singapore-based Hillman Laboratories. And recently, a volunteer received the first dose of a new experimental vaccine developed by Oxford University under a clinical trial. Meanwhile, the Africa CDC says it requires $1.4 billion to contain the outbreak. Now, amongst China's expanding high-tech export portfolio, AI glasses are becoming a new focal point. B. Ran has a story.
As Chinese-made AI glasses expand into global markets, this emerging export is drawing growing attention to the market for AR and ER glasses. China shipped 2.46 million smart glasses in 2025, up 87% year-on-year. Chinese brands accounted for 23% of global shipments and dominated the AR and ER segment with an 87% share. Companies including Renew and X-Rail are expanding across Europe and the US, while Xiaomi, Rocket, Imo, and Alibaba's Q1 are accelerating their overseas push. So we headed to Hangzhou, one of China's top innovation hubs, to visit the companies behind them and see the future for ourselves.
Tell me to find the Rocket office building. Okay, let's go.
Their products are betting on wider, more lifestyle-friendly version of AI eyewear, something people might actually wear and use in daily life.
Right now, I can see the full navigation interface projected into these glasses, guiding me directly into the office building.
The smart glasses or AI glasses, will be the most popular AI terminal device to the end user and in the AI era. So I think it's going to get more popular. So maybe in the coming 3 or 5 years, everybody's going to put AI glasses on.
The rise of multimodal AI is giving the category new momentum. They become a tool for translation, navigation, note-taking, photography, entertainment, and even real-time assistance. And in scenarios that demand richer visual experiences, AR glasses are more than just assistants. They are becoming portals for work, entertainment, communication, and spatial computing.
This is our most high-end product series. It's powered by our self-developed optical engine technology combined with a spatial computing chip. With these two key technologies integrated, we believe we are at the forefront of the AI glasses industry.
AI glasses sit at the intersection of design, fashion, software, and human behavior. China's smart glasses industry has built a strong hardware foundation. with lighter designs and AI now standard. The next step is finding useful applications and turning interest into sales.
There are like XR glasses, AR glasses, AI glasses, MR glasses. So these are completely different types of glasses, and I will use them in different scenarios. I think AI definitely pushed a lot of buttons for a lot of brands. That's the future.
Industry observers say AI exports now encompass a wide range of digital capabilities. As AI glasses become as comfortable as regular eyewear, improved optics, stronger AI features, and rising consumer acceptance are helping Chinese brands move the market from early interest to wider adoption. Yan, CGTN, Shanghai and Hangzhou.
A quick look at your business news. Here's what's ahead. Household power prices in Egypt rise by 12%. And China's zero-tariff policy offers Nigerian farmers and manufacturers a golden ticket to scale their global ambitions. Oil prices fell more than $4 a barrel on Monday after U.S. President Donald Trump held off a fresh attack on Iran as he sought a quick deal that would halt Tehran's nuclear ambitions and fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Brent crude futures fell $4.65 to $83.28, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was at $79.47 a barrel, down $5.2. Both contracts jumped more than 20% last month after fighting between the U.S. and Iran resumed, and attacks on several tankers around Oman heightened security concerns, deterring shippers from entering the Gulf to load oil. In a sign of de-escalation, Trump said late on Saturday on his Truth Social platform that Iran and other Middle Eastern countries had asked for time to complete a deal. Iran, however, says it's not currently holding any talks with the U.S. Vessels were seen around the Strait of Hormuz on Monday off the coast of Oman's Musandam. U.S. President Donald Trump said talks with Iran were to start on Monday, but declined to set a deadline for an agreement after earlier saying he had called off an imminent attack in hopes of quickly reaching a deal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and resolve the impasse over Tehran's nuclear capabilities. Iran has largely closed the Strait of Hormuz, a conduit for 20% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas, before the start of the war, causing energy prices to rise and stoking broader inflation. Egypt's Electricity and Renewable Energy Ministry has indicated it would keep tariffs unchanged for the first household consumption bracket, while raising rates for other residential users by an average of 12%. The ministry said it approved the new accounting tariff in a bid to ensure the stability of power supply and the financial sustainability of Egypt's electricity and renewable energy network, covering production, transmission and distribution. Egypt covers roughly $1.9 billion a year to bridge the gap between production costs and consumer tariffs, with the state subsidy share shrinking as household consumption increases. Egypt had raised electricity prices for higher use residential consumers and commercial users in April by an average of 16 to 20%, citing a global energy crisis linked to the conflict in the Gulf region, which more than doubled Egypt's energy import bill. Across Africa, China's sweeping zero-tariff policy enacted in May is sparking a major push towards the export industry. This duty-free access to the Chinese market is offering what many officials are calling a golden ticket for farmers and manufacturers to scale their global ambitions. Yet several countries are facing challenges in maximizing their potential in areas such as security, energy and quality assurance. However, as Tese Makende reports from Nigeria, China is looking to provide workable solutions.
A massive trade shift is brewing. China has slashed tariffs on agricultural imports like coffee beans, turning its lucrative market into a prime target for Nigerian agribusiness. But this policy breakthrough ripples far beyond the coffee fields.
Coffee is the main cash product of Ethiopia, and if we can develop this here in Plateau State, definitely it will help in the development of the economy of Plateau State and Nigeria in general.
Beijing's zero-tariff policy spans 53 African nations. In Nigeria, the stakes are exceptionally high, with bilateral trade towering at an estimated $20 billion. This makes it China's second-largest trading partner in Africa, next only to South Africa. Out of the amount, China's exports to Nigeria is valued at about $13 to $16 billion, while Nigeria's exports to China is valued at about $2 billion. That staggering trade deficit represents an enormous untapped opportunity. Analysts say this duty-free access is Nigeria's opportunity to balance the scales by aggressively scaling up non-oil export values. However, several structural bottlenecks, namely chronic power outages and rural insecurity, continue to hamstring local industries.
In the value chain of agriculture, we have a particular challenge with cold storage. So one of the challenges we've confronted over the decades is how to reduce post-harvest loss because of poor storage capacity. We want to see how to grow the feeds for the cattle, the ruminants for the animals. There's a huge opportunity waiting there across the entire country.
The federal government maintains it is unlocking critical investments to stabilize the national grid and safeguard farming hubs. Crucially, Beijing is stepping in to assist.
We believe that power is very fundamental for the industrialization. And China is a leading player in renewable energy, both in terms of solar power and wind power, nuclear and water. So we also explore the potentials, for cooperation in the infrastructure. For Nigeria, I think one of the challenges is security. There are, of course, a lot of Chinese investments here. There are a lot of Chinese citizens, and so that's why Chinese government attach huge importance for the protection of Chinese citizens overseas.
If successful, these measures could do far more than just rebalance trade lines. They are projected to spark an export boom that could supercharge job creation across the entire country. Tesum Akende, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
Nigeria is looking to technology to transform its livestock industry. New digital platforms are emerging to connect producers, traders, processors and buyers as the country seeks to improve efficiency and unlock more value from one of Africa's largest livestock sectors. Kelechi Mekalam reports.
Nigeria's livestock industry is estimated to be worth more than $21 billion and supports millions of livelihoods. But for businesses operating in the sector, accessing quality livestock and reliable market information remains a challenge. At the Meat Villa, an Abuja-based meat processing company, CEO Badamasi Kabiru says one of the biggest difficulties comes at the point of purchase.
The major challenge we're having is the pattern of procurement of the livestock, which is the bull, which you have to, it's by eye gauge. And sometimes you buy good and sometimes you buy bad.
Digital marketplaces are now attempting to bring more structure to the process by providing information that can help buyers and sellers make better decisions. The platforms are designed to create a more organized livestock supply chain where transactions can be supported by verified information. Nigeria's livestock trade is still largely driven by traditional markets and informal transactions. Digital platforms are seeking to change that by bringing more information into the buying and selling process. But for the transformation to take hold, technology will have to reach the farmers, traders, and markets that form the backbone of the industry. For Amina Omoloye, founder of Ruma Technologies, the challenge goes beyond connecting buyers and sellers. She says the industry needs systems that can track animals throughout their journey from production to the market to improve food safety and build confidence among consumers and international buyers.
Nigeria lacks traceability frameworks. Now, that's a very easy word to say, but what is the cost of that? The cost of that means that when there's a disease outbreak or when there's a contaminated product, there's no recall mechanism. Why I decided to focus on livestock was because it was an underserved market. Nigeria is the #1 livestock producer on the continent. If we're #1 producer on the continent, top 5 on the globe, why are we not exporting?
But experts say building digital systems requires more than technology. A stronger livestock sector also depends on reliable information that can guide investments, planning, and policy decisions.
So if you ask me what will be the most challenging structural challenge the industry has, I would really say is the absence of clean data. Data for decision making, data for planning, data for value chain intensification and all. So data sits on the top of it. What our data infrastructure, the database system for managing the value chain of the livestock sector in Nigeria has been and it still remains one of the biggest structural challenges we have in that sector.
As Nigeria seeks to expand agricultural exports and benefit from the African Continental Free Trade Area, digitalization could help improve market access and competitiveness. But industry players say the transition will also require investments in infrastructure, modern production practices, and wider adoption among farmers and traders. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
And let's now take a look at your sports news. Here's what's ahead. Cameroon punched their ticket to the Women's Africa Cup of Nations quarterfinals.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
And we start with the latest from the Women's Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco. Mali boosted their chances of making the knockouts with a tense 3-2 victory over Cape Verde in a dramatic Group D match on Sunday. The defeat means first-timers Cape Verde will be going home early from the tournament, having lost their opener to Ghana. Umukone gave Mali the lead in the first half before Eve Pereira equalized for Cape Verde. Fatoumata Niakate restored Mali's advantage early in the second half before Fatoumata Diarra scored what proved to be the decisive third goal in the 79th minute. Cape Verde pulled one back through Olivia Kelly in the 88th minute, but Mali held on to claim 3 vital points. In the other Group D clash, Cameroon are through to the last 8 of the competition following a hard-fought 1-0 victory over Ghana. The indomitable Lionesses followed up last week's victory over Mali with another disciplined display. Marie Nga Manga continued her fine form by scoring her third goal of the tournament. The victory leaves Cameroon top of the group with maximum points. Ghana face Mali in a winner-takes-all showdown on Thursday. The final round of the group stage matches of the WAFCON kick off on Monday. In Group A, Algeria will seek to book their place in the last 8 when they take on the already eliminated Kenya. The other fixture will see hosts Morocco aiming for a perfect finish as they take on Senegal.